So this is the second video in the series about how to create your own Python calculator. In the last video we looked at creating the user interface with the tkinter module. Before we move on, we need to have a look at how Python manipulates strings, because we'll be doing a lot of string manipulation in our calculator program. So this demonstration will cover how to concatenate, how to join strings together, how to find out how many characters are in a string, how to remove leading and trailing space characters from strings, how to remove space characters from within strings, and how to create substrings. The first thing we want to look at really is, what is a string? So in Python, let's write down an example of this. In Python, here is some text. Let's just say hello. Now in Python, if it's got speech marks around it, this is treated as a string. And it's actually made up of individual characters. Each of these is a data type in its own right, and they're called characters. Now if we want to add two strings together, we have to use a special symbol called the concatenation symbol. Concatenation. And how it would work is, we would have our string hello, and if we wanted to join another string to it, we could say how are you. So let's have a look at that in Python. So I've just opened Thorny here, and I've made the shell quite large so that we can test this out. So our first string was hello. And if I hit enter on this, it just returns the string hello. What if I try this time hello, then use the concatenator and how are you, and hit enter? You can see here that between the words hello and how are you, there is no space. See, this concatenator has not put a space in here. What it's done is it's joined the strings together. So it's joined each of these characters together. And because there is no character space, nothing has been put in here. So a character space in ASCII is ASCII character 32, and the program is looking for that, Python is looking for that. So what we would have to do in this instance, when we were joining these two strings together, we could say hello, and then concatenate, and then join on a space character, and then concatenate to it the next string, how are you. And when you hit enter this time, you can see that this space character, which looks like nothing to us, the Python interpreter has interpreted this as the ASCII space character, which is 32. Good. So now we know how to concatenate, join together two strings. Let's get another example here. I'll just clear this. So let's say in this example we've got two variables, and we're going to call our first variable first name, and we're going to assign to it a name. So it's Donald, and we've got a variable called surname, and this is Smith. Okay, so we've got two variables, first name and surname. They both store string data types, and at the moment first name is storing the value Donald and surname is storing the value Smith. What if we've got a third variable called full name, and at the moment it's empty, there is nothing in it, and we wanted to do full name is assigned first name concatenated with surname. And then if we want to see what's in full name, you can see that it's the value that was stored in first name concatenated with the value that was stored in surname. First name still stores Donald, surname still stores Smith, but full name now stores these characters, Donald Smith, which we can read as Donald Smith. Now, if we wanted to make this a wee bit more user-friendly, what we would have done is full name is assigned first name plus space concatenated with surname. And then if we wanted to look at what's in full name, you can see now it's the first name, space character, second name. Right, let's clear this and we'll have a look at the second area, which is how to find out how many characters are in a string. Now it turns out that Python has a whole module to deal with strings, to manipulate strings, and they have created a predefined function and it's called len. Right, so len is short for length, and it's a function because it returns a value. So for instance, say we've got the string hello, and we want to know how many characters are in this string. Now you and I can look at this and quickly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but how does a computer actually do that? So what you do is you call len and you pass into its brackets here, you pass in the parameter that you want to find the length of. So we're passing in hello. And because it's a function, it always has a return value. So we need to assign this returned value to a variable. So we'll make a variable called, let's say, num. Okay, so let's do this in Thonny and see what happens. So we said num is assigned len speech marks hello. Now you can see that len is a different colour. It's a kind of reddy colour in my version of Thonny, and that's telling you that Python recognises this as a function. So what will happen here is this statement is called an assignment statement. Here is the assignment operator. So whatever's on the right hand side of this operator is evaluated first, and once the answer is found, it will then be stored in the variable on the left hand side of the operator. So when I press enter here, I'm expecting to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm expecting to see the number 5 returned. Yeah, but I can't see it yet because it's been returned and stored in this variable num. There you go, 5. So 5 was returned from the function len, and it was stored in num, and then we wanted to see what was actually being stored in num, and there it is, the number 5. So let's try another one. Let's say the same variable num, and this time we want to find the length of holidays are fun. Now before we evaluate this, what do you think the answer is going to be here if you count these up? Did you get 16? Because remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Don't forget those space characters, they do count as a character. Just because you and I can't see them, the computer sees them and records them as a space character. So this is very powerful, and we're going to use this processing this len a lot. Next we're going to look at how to remove leading and trailing space characters. So let's clear Thonny, and clear this. So again, there is a predefined function, but this time the function is called, instead of being called len, to find the length, this time the function is called strip. And what it does is strip off any leading and trailing space characters from a string. So, for instance, say we've got the string hello, and we have added a space character here and a space character here. When you run the code hello dot strip, then this space character and this space character would be removed, and what would be returned is the string HELLO. So let's try that in Python. Let's put in our string hello dot strip, and it returns hello, because in this instance we hadn't put any space characters before the H or after the O. Let's try it again. This time we'll put in space space hello space space dot strip, and you can see that it's removed these spaces. Now, what if we've got a string I love holidays, and then we put on dot strip to this? Do you think this space character between the I and the L and this space character between the E and the H will be removed? Let's see what happens. Well, you can see here that they're not, they are maintained. So the strip method only removes leading and trailing white space. The next string manipulation we'll look at is how to remove space characters from within a string. In order to remove the space between I and L and E and H, we can use a string manipulation method called replace. Right, so let's clear this and have a look at this replace. It's called replace. And this one requires parameters to be passed into it. So for instance, say we have the string I love holidays, and we've got a space character here and a space character here. We would call the method replace, and we would pass into it what we want to get rid of. So in this instance it's a space, and the second parameter is what we want to replace it with, which is no space. So let's see this in action. Put the string in, I love holidays, dot replace. Might have to make this a bit wider. And we need to pass in parameters here to tell it what we want to remove and what we want to replace it with. So which character we want to remove and what do we want to replace that character with. So the space character is speech mark space speech mark, and the comma is separating the two parameters, and no space is speech mark and immediately speech mark after it. You can see that there is no space there, and then hit enter. And all space characters have been removed from the string. Now, you might be saying to yourself, oh, I wonder if that will work for other characters. Well, why don't we try it and see? So let's put that in. And this time we say dot replace, but we want to get rid of, let's say, all instances of O. And we want to replace it with, let's say, a W. In fact, let's put in a star. So now you can see what was an O has now been replaced with a star. So it's not just the space character that can be replaced with no space. You can replace any ASCII character with a different one. Next we're going to look at how to create substrings. So let's remove this for a minute and then focus on substrings. The creation of substrings is sometimes called slicing in Python. So I'm going to entitle this substring slicing. Now there isn't a method to slice as such, but if we look at this example it might make more sense to you. So let's say we've got we'll go back to what we were doing earlier on where we were joining strings together. We were joining separate first name and surnames together. So let's say we've got a name, John Brown. Okay. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters in this. And I'm going to put a comma in here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 characters in this. Okay, so here's your string speech marks. So this is a string of 11 characters. And if I put this square bracket around here, then that might make more sense to you because you've seen this bracket when we've been talking about array data structures. So you could think of this as an array of individual characters rather than one big string. So that's the empty character there. So here's our individual characters, and if we're thinking of it as an array, then that means that each of these characters has a location within this data structure. So the first location is named 0. The address of this first location is 0. The address of the second location is 1. The address of the third location is 2. The address of the fourth location is 3. The address of the fifth location is 4. The address of the sixth location is 5, and so on. So each of these characters has got its own location. So say we created a variable called fillname, and we had assigned to it the string John, space Brown. If I wanted to identify the location of this comma, I could. If I wanted to know how many characters were in this string, I could use the len function. And if I want to create a substring of the forename and a substring of the surname, I could do that as well using slicing. So that's what we'll look at next. So fillname's our variable. So if I said fillname, start at location 0 and slice off at location 4, what would be returned? And if I said I want that stored in first name, what would then be stored in first name? And if I did something similar for surname, so I'm taking my full name string and I want you to start at location 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want you to start at location 6 this time. And I want you to go to the end. Now, how do we know what the end is? Now, we can count up because we can see it here. But what if we used this len and just passed into it full name, we know that's going to return how many characters are in this full. Yeah, so this is how you start to build up your knowledge and your skill level, if you can take things that you've learned previously and apply them to solutions that you're looking for now. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to make this larger so that you can see it, and I'm going to work in the actual code area rather than just the shell. So I'm going to create a variable called fillname, and I'm going to set it up to be John, comma, space Brown, and I want first name to be an empty string and surname to be an empty string. And I'm saying that I want to now populate first name with a sliced off substring of full name. So I'm saying first name is assigned full name, square bracket, position 0, 2, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, position 4. And I want surname to be another substring of full name, but this time I want it to start at the B, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, position 6. And I want you to go to the end of the string, so I'm going to put in here len and pass into it full name. Right, now I want to print out first name, and I want to print out surname, and then I want to run it, and we've got John in first name and Brown in surname. Now, does that mean that full name no longer contains John, comma, Brown? Let's clear this. Let's make this more meaningful. And we'll put in a, so we'll say first name contains the substring first name, and surname contains the substring surname. Now that's a strange spelling of contains there. Now we also want to print out what's in full name, so we'll say print full name contains full name. First, yeah, okay, let's save that and run it. So full name contains John, comma, space Brown. First name contains the substring John, and surname contains the substring Brown. Good. Right, now let's have another look at this, because we've got a comma in here. So let's say we actually didn't know what was stored in full name, but we know that the first name and the surname have been separated by a comma and a space following the comma. So how can we produce this first name and surname without knowing how many characters are in first name and how many characters are in surname? Right, let's have a look at this then. So we're going to keep the printouts the same, so we'll just move them down. But this time we can't rely on the exact character locations in that array of 0 and 4. What we need to do is find out which location the comma is at. I'm going to make a variable called comma location. And I'm going to assign to it 0 at the moment because I don't know. And then what I'm going to do is loop through that full name. I'm going to iterate over every character in that variable John, comma, space Brown. And I'm going to test each character to see if it's equal to a comma. And if it is equal to a comma, I'm going to store the index location of that comma. So we'll say for index in range. We know how big full name is, don't we? We can use len full name. And every time this loop goes round, it's going to test every one of these characters, and we're going to test it for equality. So what we want to say is if full name position index is exactly equal to speech mark, comma, speech mark, then comma location is assigned whatever's been stored in index. Now, if you've forgotten how this index variable works, this is your loop counter. It begins at 0, and every time this loop iterates, 1 is added. It's incremented by 1. So because we're iterating over this string, and we know that the first location in the string is location 0, and the first value of index is 0, we can use this to iterate over each character, and every time the loop goes round it moves to a different character. So when it finds the character, so it'll go, first time the loop goes round index is 0, next time the loop goes round index is 1, the next time the loop goes round index is 2, the next time the loop goes round index is 3, the next time the loop goes round index is 4, and when it tests this condition and it finds it's true, it's going to update comma location with 4. Then we can, instead of putting in 4 here, we can put in comma location. And because we know that this is position 4, position 5, and then the surname starts there, we can say comma location plus 1 will give you the space character, or comma location plus 2 will give you the first letter of the surname, because we know that the rule is after the comma there is a space character. So that means for surname, instead of putting in this hard-coded 6, we can put in here comma location plus 2. Right, now let's get the print statements back up and run it. And you can see that full name still contains John Brown, and the first name has brought back John, and the surname has brought back Brown correctly. Now, if we changed this and we didn't put in the plus 2 here, let's see what would happen. This time for the surname, it's bringing back comma, space, and then the start of the surname. So that's very powerful, isn't it? Let's try another full name and see what happens. So this time we'll try Daisy Little John. Now let's fix this surname because we need to add plus 2 here. And then save it and run it. And you can see that full name contains Daisy, comma, space, Little John. First name contains Daisy, and surname contains Little John. So it doesn't matter what we use as our full name, this code that has been written will process and find the first name and surname as long as the full name is written following the rule that the first name needs to be separated by a comma and 1 space. Now, how do we apply this new knowledge to our calculator? Well, let's open up another file and we'll save the file as arithmetic calculation string manipulation. Nice and catchy. And let's put in some comments at the top here to explain what we're going to do. The user will enter a calculation string. For example, 3 plus 4. The program will then process the string to find the first number, the arithmetic operator and the second number, it will then perform the calculation and return the result to be printed to screen. So we're going to need a couple of variables for this. We'll have one called num1, and at the moment that's going to store 0 because it's an integer. Num2, again, we'll set it up to be 0 because it's an integer. We'll have one for operator, and that's going to be a string, so we'll set that up to be an empty string. Result, now we'll set that up to be floating point because we don't know if the operator is going to be a divide, and if it is, there's always a remainder. And then we need the calculation string, and we'll set that up to be an empty string. That should do us. Now what we need to do next is we need to create an array of possible arithmetic operators that the user could put in. So let's say operators, and this is an empty array, and we're going to fill it up with single characters. So plus, subtract, multiply and divide. We'll keep it at that just now. Right, so we're now ready to get our input. Calculation string. Is assigned the result of this input statement. So inside your input, this is a predefined function input. Inside the speech marks is what's printed out onto the screen, and whatever the user types in response is then stored in calculation string. So we'll say enter a calculation, and it could be, so we'll say e.g. 3 plus 4. Okay, right, so that's us got our calculation in now, so we now need to process this. So why don't we print that out and see what happens? So print calculation string. So we'll just do this test. So save it, run it. So it says enter a calculation, for example 3 plus 4, so I'm going to put in 5 plus 4, and the printout in line 20 has printed to the screen 5 plus 4. So that's working correctly. It's always good to test as you go. Right, I don't need this print statement anymore because I have tested that and that is working. So what I want to do now is, if I've got 5 plus 4 in this calculation string, then I know by looking at it, number 1 should contain 5, number 2 should contain 4, and the operator should contain the plus symbol. So we need to find out which location in this string contains the operator, and then slice up for the first number from 0 to the operator, and the second number from 1 past the operator to the end of the string. Sounds easy enough, doesn't it? So let's go ahead and do that now. So we need to iterate over the string. So we say for index in range, and it's the length of the string, and the string is called calculation string. So it's going to go over every single character in that string, and it's going to, we're now going to test it. So we're going to say if calculation string location index, the square brackets mean that in this string go to the location. So it's either going to be, where is it? Location 0, location 1, or location 2. So if whatever character is being processed at that particular time is in operators. Then what we want to do is we want to find the location, don't we? So have we got a variable for that? Not yet. So we want to find, let's put one in here. So operator location. And we'll set that up to be 0. So if there is an operator in there that matches, then we're going to say op location is equal to whatever the index is. And we also want to know what the actual operator is. So operator is assigned calculation string index. Right, so we've now, after this processing, we've identified what the operator is. So we'll come out of this loop. So we're right back to the edge. We're no longer using the loop because we've got the information we need. We can now find, what did we call it, num1. So num1 is assigned calculation string square brackets, and it's from the location 0 to op location. And num2 is calculation string, and that's from, this time it's op location plus 1 to the length of the calculation string. So now we need to carry out the calculation, and in order to do that we need to know what the operator is. So we can say if operator is equal to plus, then the result will be num1 plus num2. Elif, the operator, is equal to subtract, then result is assigned num1 subtract num2. Do you see where I'm going here? Elif operator is equal to multiply, then result is equal to num1 multiplied by num2, and because the last one is divide, we'll say else result is assigned num1 divided by, oops, that's not a divide, divided by num2. So we can handle addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So we've used if, elif, elif, else. This is called a selection statement, and only one of these will execute as soon as one is true, as soon as one condition is true. So in line 28 where it says if the condition is the value stored in operator is exactly equal to the plus, if that's true, then line 29 will be executed and the program will jump out of this selection statement down to line 36 here. So it will test if that's not true, it will come down and test the next elif, and if that's true, it will execute line 31 and jump out of the full selection statement, and it will go through until it finds one that's true. If it doesn't find any that's true, this else means it will do this one. It will execute line 35 if the conditional statements for the if, the elif and the elif were not true. It will do that. So now we need to output our result. So we want to say print the result of the calculation, and we'll add on the calculation string here, will we? Now I should have concatenated that. Is result. Now I've used the concatenation operator because this is a string and I know that calculation string is a string, but I need to put a space in there so that there is a space when it prints out. It's a bit more user friendly, and again I need a space there. I've used a comma here because result is not a string. Result, remember we set that up to be floating point on line 13 here. Okay, let's save it and run it. In fact, I'm going to clear this and then run it. Right, so it says enter a calculation, so I'll say 5 plus 6. Enter. Oh. Operators is not defined. Operators is not defined. What have I done wrong? Operators. Let's change that. Operators. An extra T there that's not needed. Operators. Okay, so I'll clear this again. Save it and run it. So 5 plus 6 is 56. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Why did that happen, do you think? So it looks as if it's concatenated it, doesn't it? 5 plus 6. That's very interesting because, where are we? Your input statement is bringing in a string. Can you do a calculation on a string? No, you can't. What are we going to have to do here? This num1 and num2 need to be turned into integers. So we've got two choices here. We can either do it here for every single one of those, and I think we will. So we need our wee int predefined function. And what that does, it takes this num1, which at the moment is a string, and just for this particular calculation, it's going to turn it into an integer to allow this to be an arithmetic operation rather than a concatenation. So int. Now we'll test that for plus, and if it works, we'll do it for the other ones. So let's run it again. 5 plus 6. And this time the answer is 11 rather than 56. That looks like, doesn't it? But it's just the characters 5 and 6 joined together because that was a concatenation, because we hadn't used int to cast this string as an integer so that it can be calculated. Right, so let's do the same here. Int. Int. And if you're not sure what the data type of a variable is, you can ask Python to tell you. So let me finish this off. Int. So for instance, let me clear this and say down here, I say num1 is assigned number 1, but I've put it inside speech marks. If I want to find out the data type of num1, I would say type num1, and it's telling me that it's a string. Okay, now if I do this again, but this time I say num2 is assigned 0.0. If I now say type num2, it's going to tell me that this is a floating point this variable num2, is storing the data type floating point. And let's do another one down here. So we'll say num3 is assigned 3, and if I say type num3, hit enter, you can see it's now an int. So we've got the integer data type, the floating point data type, which is a real number, a number with a decimal point, and if it's got speech marks, it's the string. So if you're not sure, if you're doing any testing on your code and you're trying to find out what's happened, check this out. Use type to quickly find out what the variable data type is. Okay, now let's run this. I'm going to clear that and run this again, and this time I'm going to do a subtraction. So it's going to be 10 take away 2, and the answer is 8. So it doesn't matter that I used 2 character spaces for the first number. Our program is able to handle that. Let's do another one with multiplication this time. So we'll run it again, and we'll say 25 times 4, and the answer is 100, so that's working okay. Let's do it once more with a division, and we'll do, let's say, 250 divided by 5, and the answer is 50, and the answer has been returned as a floating point. Remember, I said division returns a floating point. So it doesn't matter how many character spaces your string occupies for num1 or num2, the operator character is able to identify which location within the string, and then our slicing is able to go from 0 until whatever the location of this is, and it will bring back everything before that. And then the second number is 1 after the location of the operator. Good. So can you see how we can use this in our calculations that we're about to do for this calculator? This is very useful to you. It's worth spending some time to understand it, practice it yourself.